Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unworthy History. Today we got some more actual history for you from this book right here, Border Wars of Texas by James T. Deshields, published all the way back in 1912. Now, this story today is another one about the battles between the Karankawa Indians and Stephen F. Austin's colonists. This one is called Stephen F. Austin Leads an Expedition Against the Karankawas. As the confines of Austin's colony were extending in every direction, many outrages were perpetrated on the more venturesome and exposed settlers. Colonel Austin, now deeming his forces sufficiently strong, determined to chastise and expel the thieving and murderous Karankawas from his colony. Accordingly, in July, he headed an expedition of 40 or 50 armed men from San Felipe. Crossing the Colorado near Eagle Lake and proceeding down the west side of the river to Jennings Camp, thence to the Lavaca River below the mouth of Navidad, most of the route being through the prairie country. Pioneers were detailed to open roads through the dense thickets and canebrakes bordering streams they crossed, but the Indians had warning of this expedition and fled from the colony west toward the San Antonio River. Returning to the capital for fresh supplies and reinforcements, Austin determined to pursue and deal these Indians a telling blow while they were united in their retreat. This second expedition of some 90 men, 30 of whom were black men, the slaves of Colonel Jared E. Gross, mounted, armed, and commanded by him, left San Felipe in August, passing the Colorado River at the Atascocito crossing and following the Atascocito Road to the Guadalupe River near the present town of Victoria. Thence they marched in the direction of La Bahia, expecting to strike the Indians west of the San Antonio River, on either Espiritu Santa or Aransas Bays. But on the Manahia Creek, a few miles east of that town, says John Henry Brown, he was met by the priest, alcalde, and citizens, who appeared as mediators for the Indians. The Karankawas, aforetime nominally belonging to the mission of La Bahia as converted Indians, now seeing danger approaching, professed penitence and appealed to the priest and alcalde to avert their threatened destruction. The result was a conference and a quasi-treaty, in which the Indians solemnly pledged themselves to never again come east of the San Antonio or Guadalupe rivers. The colonists thereupon returned home. For a time, these Indians remained quiet. The good priest exerted himself on their behalf, and hopes were entertained that he would succeed in bringing them under the influence of Christian civilization. But the Karankawas could not long restrain their murderous and thieving propensities. The treaty was soon broken, and for more than 20 years they continued to commit many petty and some serious depredations. In fact, says Kuykendall, some of the greatest atrocities ever committed by these Indians in Austin's colony were perpetrated after this treaty was made. In the winter of this year, the families of Flowers and Kavanaugh were murdered by the Karankawas. Captain Buckner with a company pursued the Indians to their camp on the bay, about 3 miles east of the present town of Matagorda, where at daybreak he made a surprise attack, killing some 30 and completely routing them. This was the greatest loss these Indians ever sustained in any one fight with the colonists. Sometime during the year 1832, Captain John Ingram led a party of 19 men in an attack on an encampment of Karankawas on Live Oak Creek, within the present limits of Matagorda County. The party fired on the Indians at the dawn of day, killing 4 or 5 of them and dispersing the remainder. In another incident near the mouth of the Guadalupe River in 1834, says John Henry Brown, they were only deterred from attacking the party of Major James Kerr, who was surveying lands for De Leon's colony, by a ruse practiced upon them by Kerr. And during that same year they were whipped in a fight near Laguna Verde, or Green Lake, now in Calhoun County, by a party of Mexican and American settlers commanded by the brave Captain Placido Benavides. In the year 1834 or 1835, says Kuykendall, the Tonkawas, instigated by the Mexicans of Victoria, treacherously assassinated 15 or 20 of the Karankawas. The Tonkawas went to the camp of the Karankawas, taking with them a small boy, who secretly cut the bowstrings of all the Karankawas. The Tonkawas then fell upon them and murdered all but 2 or 3. In the spring of 1836, the Karankawas still counted 25 or 30 warriors. When the army of invasion reached our frontier, they joined it and fought against us at the mission of Refugio in March of 1836. They had previously offered to fight for the Americans, but their offer was either rejected or neglected. About 1840, they were encamped on the Guadalupe River below Victoria, near the junction with the San Antonio River, and on account of some depredations committed by them, they were attacked by the Mexican and American settlers of that vicinity, and many were killed. They fled to the southwest along the coast, says Kenny, and their brief history hastens to its catastrophe. In 1843, they were camped about 50 miles southwest of Corpus Christi, where they were found by a Mexican ranging company under Captain Rafael Aldrete, who had known them from his childhood as cannibals. He at once attacked and almost annihilated them, with very few escaping. Their last notable hostile act was the murder of Captain John Kemper at his home on the Guadalupe River in Victoria County in November of 1845. Mrs. Kemper, with her 2 little children and her mother, after the Indians had attempted to burn them with a dwelling house, escaped in the stormy night and crept to the house of Alonzo Bass, situated 12 miles distant on the Calito. The last that was seen of these Indians, says Kenny, was in 1847, when a remnant of some 8 or 10 Karankawas crossed the Rio Grande River at its mouth, begging their way into Mexico and oblivion. In the year 1855, adds Kuykendall, the once formidable tribe of Karankawas had dwindled to 6 or 8 individuals, who were residing in Mexico near San Fernando in the state of Tamaulipas. So that's the end of this story. These are some of the last battles between Austin's colonists and the Karankawa Indians. So once again, this is from a playlist I'm doing on Border Wars of Texas, which is a book published all the way back in 1912 by James T. Deshields. So if you haven't seen some of these earlier videos, you can watch those about some of the earlier battles between this group of Indians and Austin's colonists. So if you want to see more episodes like this, then be sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on Unworthy History.